My name is Paul Poppenhager. The date today is, geez, what is it? I forgot it already. October the 12th, 1911. Oh, 2011. Woo! Am I getting old? This is bad. This is bad. And the place is a Hall of Fame weekend at Gene Paul Thacker's drop zone in Georgia, in Fort Bragg. Which where I made my first jump was at Fort Bragg. 1900 and, let me see, 58. And it scared the shit out of me. Okay, I don't know what else. Give me a hint.
Your first, how you got into skydiving.
Oh, okay.
Once you got out of
we'll go
the
into a
Army.
long story here.
You were a rigger.
I was in the 82nd Airborne Division, and I was assigned to the 76th Tank Battalion. I hated it and wanted out of it, and I saw a slip on the bulletin board about they needed volunteers for the infantry. So I got into signed up for the 505. I hated that too, because we just spent all the time in the field and didn't learn anything. I already knew how to shoot a gun. And one day I looked out of the orderly room and I saw a little sign that says Parachute Riggers Volunteers. And my buddy says, "You are crazy, those guys work too hard." And I said, "Yeah, but they don't have to go out in the field all the time, you know." So I put my name down and I was selected and went to rigger school, Fort Lee, Virginia. And that was the old days when it was a long school, about 4 months. And I got into first a heavy drop, packing the big cargo chutes and stuff of that type. I was there for about 6 weeks. Then they transferred me to personnel. That's backpacks and reserves for jumpers. We used the T-7A backpack, which was a 12-weave Second World War leftover piece of shit, and a reserve that was a 12-weave 24-foot, and that was a piece of junk. But we didn't know the difference, and I kind of fell in love with jumping out of airplanes for some reason. The first one scared the hell out of me, but everybody else was too. And the second one, I was kind of apprehensive, but I stood up. You weren't supposed to. You get a DR if they saw you stand up. But I was so impressed with myself, I just say, "Hey, look what I did." You know, I stood up. And I saw some captain looking, I dropped to the ground right away. In the process of being in the 82nd, in the time that I was in Airborne, I kind of fell in love with jumping out of airplanes. I mean, I really fell in love with parachutes. I made 9 jumps with the test board near the end of my enlistment, and that was with a couple of new kind of parachutes they were experiencing with, and the commander at the time was a guy named Captain Fix, and he was always on the test jumps. Doesn't matter what anybody jumped, he was on the test jump. And he would always be the last out, and he always jumped a free fall rig, a backpack, and without a reserve, always. And nice guy. And on the, I think it was the 8th or 9th test board jump that I made. It was the last one I made. I was last out of the plane, and he would follow the static line guys out and do a free fall. And he went in. And it really, I quit the test board, went back to packing parachutes, because it really disturbed me quite badly, because he was such a nice guy, and he really knew what the hell he was doing, except he was stupid. no reserve, you know, God. And at 1,000 feet, it's on top of that. And of course, that's when Fort Bragg really cracked down on anybody wanting to make free fall jumps, you know, out of off duty, or in duty, or any way. They did. You weren't allowed to do that. That was no way. And Captain Fick started that one. But when I got out, it was hard to get a job. I had a couple kids. And, it was really hard. I drove a truck for a while, and I delivered paint to the airport, Miami International, in a truck. Hated the job. I made $49.80 a week for 5 days, 5.5 days a week. Oh, and I was able to support a family and live on that. That's hard to believe now. But there wasn't much money left over, let's put it that way. And I was delivering airplane paints for the paint company in the truck that I was driving to Miami International Airport. And I got the route about every day. I'd go to the airport and deliver paint to Eastern Airlines, National Airlines, Pan Am, whoever needed paint. And I was going to night school on the GI Bill to get my GED, because I'd never finished high school before. And had come Christmas time, and I was getting pretty upset with my job, and I hated it, and I was going to go back in the Army after Christmas. And the last day I was going to night school to get the diploma, and the government was paying for it. That was mainly why I was going, to get the check. And the guy next to me was an older fella, and a big tall guy, and he probably weighed about 220, 30 pounds, clean cut. And he had been there the whole time I'd been in that course. I never spoke to him, but I wasn't interested in the course at all, because this was my last night. Christmas vacation was starting, and by January the 1st, I would be re-enlisting. So I wasn't going to be in school anymore. And but at 8 o'clock, they gave us a break, coffee break. Everybody goes down to the coffee shop, and my buddies that I knew there, we all had coffee together, and this older fella that always sat by me came by, and there was a seat open on our table, and he asked me, could he sit with us? And I said, sure, come on. So he sits down, and he says, I noticed that you're diddling and dabbling on the paper when our instructor was doing the algebra. You're drawing airplanes and stuff. Well, what? Parachutes and airplanes, C-119s and C-46s, and I'm drawing all that stuff. And I said, yeah, that's what I used to do, you know. And he said, were you a parachute rigger? And I said, sure was. You jump qualified? Sure am. He said, you know, we've had an opening for somebody like you for 5 years. I said, where? At the Air Force Base, Reserve Base, at the Miami International. I went there all the time delivering paint, you know. I said, sure, I know where it is. Well, the guy says, gave me his card, told me to come look at it and see him, and they checked me out, and I got a job with the government. And I was a parachute rigger, and I was with them, what, 7 years, 8 years? I don't know.